Hello? Wow. Okay. Um, Hi, everyone. We have one more panelist who's stuck in traffic from Abu Dhabi, so please, we're going to make him sit in the red seat when he gets here. Thank you all for joining us today. Wait, I'm going to put one second. I'm putting my phone on no data so I don't get messages while we're. Okay, bear with us here. So we're here today to talk about multidisciplinary approaches to working in the creative industry. I know it sounds like a mouthful, but essentially what we want to try to do in this conversation is talk about, how do you get into what we now call the creative industries, and the fact that you don't have to be an artist, you don't have to be an architect, you don't actually even have to be a creative to work with any one of our institutions or be a part of that scene. We have two in person and one on his way panelists today, Amina, Khalid, and Sultan, who's coming. And between the three of them, they've each had very different career paths and journeys to where they are now. And we're just going to try to unpack that a bit. But I don't want to do most of the talking. I want them to do most of the talking, and hopefully a lot of questions from the audience as well. To introduce myself, my name is Leila bin Break. I am the director for the National Pavilion UAE at the Venice Biennale. We represent the country at one of the biggest international platforms for art and architecture, and we've been doing that since 2009. We do have a lot, and we also have an internship program that we run, which is open right now. And part of this is to kind of encourage people to apply to our internship program as well. Okay, before we start, can I ask Amina and Khalid I'll start with Amina, for maybe just give us a brief about, who you are, where you're working now, and then just briefly, how did you end up there? Like, where did you study, and then what did you do in a job? Was there a certain moment where you had an epiphany and be like, oh, this is what I want to do? And have you figured out your life yet? Are you grown up? Did you figure it all out?
Long story short, no. Still figuring it out. Trying to live, not last, as my philosophy professor used to say. So my name is Amina, and I'm a Bosnian researcher. I like to say that a lot when I talk about myself. So I'm currently working for the Salama bint Hamdan Al Nahyan Foundation, also known as SHF. As a manager of strategic storytelling in the strategic storytelling department. And I know that maybe your first thought when you hear that is, what is strategic storytelling? It's actually a combination of storytelling as a narrative, as a core of everything, coupled with strategy and comms and research. And so all of that in this beautiful mix that we call strategic storytelling. So that's where I'm at the moment. But obviously I did not study, you can't really study like strategic storytelling as a BE degree. But what I did, I started with political science, Arabic, public policy research at NYU, Abu Dhabi. And then I went into international relations at Cambridge. And then I came back and I started working, among many things, as a journalist as well, because writing has always been one of my passions. And that somehow got me through advisory work, public policy for the Year of Tolerance, through second masters, and then now I'm here in strategic storytelling. So there's a lot of, I would say, mixing and matching between different fields, but somehow there are certain threads that have been present throughout. So I think maybe I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And just to clarify, the Salama bint Hamdan Al Nahyan Foundation is the commissioner to the National Pavilion UAE. So we work very closely many times with your organization. It's okay, I can say it. And Khalid, go ahead. Your turn.
Sure. Thank you, Amina. It'll be hard to keep up with you after that, after that run in Trader Mill. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Khalid Al-Blushi. Currently, I'm a strategic partnership specialist for the Early Childhood Authority in Abu Dhabi. This was not in any way or form where I expected to end up. I actually studied architectural engineering in UAEU. Then throughout the course, I came across the opportunity for the National Pavilion Internship Program. I applied, and it was always out of whim. It wasn't part of my scope. I just wanted to see if there's a possibility, if there's a chance that I would get in. And thank you for giving me the opportunity, Layla. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for applying.
Of course, of course. And from that point forward, the experience that I had in Venice and the people I met through the course and the network itself, when it came to the National Pavilion, to SHF, the cultural institutions in the UAE, it kind of opened and broadened my mind into the creative sector, whether it was architecture, whether it was ideation, concept development. And funny enough, in Venice, I was introduced to the historical rehabilitation and preservation of the registered buildings. That was one of the workshops that we attended. It kind of opened my mind into that and led me into being part of the ministry's committee in the technical committee for heritage, heritage listing. Yeah. And that's when I got involved with the Ministry of Culture and Youth. I spent some time there as a architecture and design specialist for a couple of years. I was part of the committee. I handled a few projects within the preservation, the heritage preservation, the architecture preservation. From then, I also expanded into visual arts. I handled a few of the ministry's international collaborations, whether it was working with the National Pavilion for Venice and also Guangzhou Biennale, Triennale di Milano, Salon del Mobile. I've helped a lot of creatives come into that field internationally and expose them to the international platform of the creative design. And from there, I've kind of took along the skills that are required to develop strategic partnerships, also design thinking skills. And when I was asked to be part of the early childhood development, one of the biggest questions was, why would I move from the cultural sector to the social sector? Well, despite the fact which sector you would be working in, there are skills that are tangible they can carry along with you. And that is all thanks to the creative industry, where I developed my design thinking skills and my creative concept development. So, which proves a fact written, especially with the title of our today's talk, is that no matter what industry you would walk it through, these skills are things that you can carry along and have an impactful change within any sector you deal in.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Khalid.
Yeah, sorry for taking so long.
No, it's good. You've done a lot of different things. And
Sultan, give me time.
Yeah, no, we have time. Don't worry. Sultan, welcome. I'm glad you made it. So we're just starting our talk, and I've asked everyone to briefly introduce, who you are, where you're working right now, but talk a little bit about what was that path from when you graduated, or what did you study in university to where you are now, and if there were any moments that were like an epiphany for you to kind of, yes, this is the direction where I want to go.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Lesson 101, don't be late in your career. So just to introduce myself, my name is Sultan Mahid. Thank you, Leila, for introducing. I am working at Miral. I'm not sure if anyone who knows what Miral is. Miral is a large development management company in Abu Dhabi. So basically, all of the attractions, SeaWorld, Warner Brothers, Yas Bay, Yas Island as a whole, is something under us. And we've been heading into a more cultural direction. So the Natural History Museum on Saadiyat, the Center of Curiosity with Team Lab from Japan, and maybe 18, 20 other new projects we haven't announced yet. So my role there is called Ideation Manager. So our project pipeline, all of our new projects, starts with our team. We basically strategize, vision. I focus on the content curation, visitor experience. I'm trying to think what else. A bunch of other stuff, whatever they throw me at. And my career, I studied architecture and fine arts. I double majored. I thought I was going to be an architect and get into design. And it's been 10 years since graduating, actually exactly 10 years. And it's been an interesting path. I was in design studios, and then I realized I loved more than anything the top-level strategy and visioning. But I think just to talk about it, can I talk about what I really, really appreciate about it, or how it helps?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess
We're here to talk about all the ins and outs.
Okay. I think, I'm not sure anyone here is looking into architecture. Architecture is a tough major. It's a very tough major. But I can, It is. It's a very tough major. Sleepless nights. But I think if you look around you, especially we have a great example in AUS, a lot of the architects who graduated, they are all over the creative field. Artists, designers, architects, visionary, strategists, fine artists. I think architecture really teaches you a lot about so many things. I guess you can consider yourself a multidisciplinary. And what I liked and what kind of put me on this path where more and more I enjoyed the actual strategy, the thinking, the sitting down, without getting into the details of this goes here, this goes there. And I guess more than anything, visitor experience is something that has become kind of a renaissance, that everyone is saying, okay, I built this place, but what is my experience? What is the narrative? What is the story? These are things I think in the creative field will always be part of your I guess, your narrative, your practice. It's so important today because people expect this. We've seen a lot. Dubai has improved a lot. The UAE has improved a lot in that field. So we expect a visitor experience. When I walk in, what is my experience from the door to the exit? And I think that in architecture and in the creative field, I think has led me to this place where I kind of look at that. And as well, having an architecture degree does help. I get to kind of challenge architects. I'm on the other side now, which is really fun. And I get to tell them what to do, but it makes it even better.
It sounds like you really enjoy the telling them what to do part. Well, speaking of architecture and studies of having followed a career, Khalid, you also studied architecture. I mean, both you and Sultan studied architecture. Do you feel that was kind of before one, like, why did you decide to study architecture? What led you there? And were there certain skill sets that you learned there that helped you kind of figure out these other career paths that you wanted to pursue? Do you want to talk about that a little bit, or?
Yeah, definitely. So when I came across the going to the field of architecture, firstly it was architectural engineering. So that was a big emphasis, from the demand of the market, have to be technical. So that's where the engineering part came. The architecture part was my way of getting into concept development, concept design. I was always fascinated about ideation and creating things. Just the whole idea of having to fabricate from one point to the other. I think the skills that I've taken from my education was the critical thinking and design thinking, and trying to get into problem solving and project management as a whole. That's one thing that kept going with me in every opportunity that I was presented and every position I've taken. Design thinking is not just production design, or it's not just coming up with a product. It's the process of developing that idea and going through all the stages that are required to have an idea or have an end product that has an outcome and can generate results. So I think that would be the most important skill that I've taken with me. Yeah.
Okay, great. And Amina, you didn't study anything to do with the creative industries, I think. And how do you feel that the path that you chose to study gave you certain skills or a mindset to bring you now to be working in an organization that is leading some of the big projects in the UAE?
To be honest, I think that's a really good question because I didn't expect as well to be working in this industry. But I do believe that research is at the core of everything just as much as a good story is. So if you can do your research well, understand your audiences, your data, a lot of that is in the process of getting to a design or getting to a product or getting to a creative, whatever it is in terms of outcome, whether it's an exhibition or a book or, and as a writer as well, that aspect of narrating a very powerful story that drives the point home or that answers the so what question among the sea of, things that when you read today, a lot of the things you wonder, okay, so what? So what is the core of it? So the research aspect and then the storytelling aspect, that's where I kind of see the combination of both of that to add to the creative process, whatever the process is about and whatever the end goal is. And I think that coupled with that creative or design thinking, I think really makes a very powerful team, makes a very powerful, whether it's a project or whether it's something that you're working towards in the end. That's how I see my role, humbly kind of adjacent to the creative process.
Okay. So, I mean, in essence, none of you have used this word. It sounds like a sense of curiosity and questioning, analyzing in a way that's a constant, right? So you all, even with your writing, kind of have an attachment to creative, processes. Let's say we have some individuals here today who, or that we've spoken to in our booth upstairs, who are not studying or not involved. They're at university right now. They're thinking about graduating. They're curious about what are these industries, but they're not necessarily studying art or architecture or design or fashion or any of these things. What kind of advice would you give to them? And one, is it beneficial that they enter into these industries? I think we need them. But, it'd be also good to hear from all of your different, like you're working in education now, Khalid. So how do these things filter into, like, how can they gain access into being a part of those conversations? And, any advice on that?
There's a lot to learn from the whole process itself, from studying, from selecting your degree, and actually going through and studying, and then submitting your project, and then finding a job, looking for a job, and getting one. I'd say in every position, there should be a man that has that innate talent, that has the skill that he developed from that study from that course that he took, right? So a man for the job, let's say. If you were into policy, it's not necessarily you have to study policy to become part of the policy team, let's say. Because policymakers would require the background that it takes to develop a policy which relates to the sector they're in, whether it was education, creative, health. You wouldn't be able to create a policy or create a team without having the skills that are gained from that specific sector. So let's say if there's a team that would want to create a policy in health, or let's say some new regulation that came within DOH or the Department of Health, they would require a physician or a doctor to be present, or somebody who had that background, in order to translate the idea or the knowledge that he had that he gained from his experiences. So walking into the creative industry, it's not met with despair all the time. Let's say if you are majoring in arts, fine arts, performance art, you will be one day in a position where you are giving directions or actually giving opinion to people in leadership from your personal background when it comes to that field itself. So my advice would be just, if you're actually passionate about something that will keep you going and actually allow you to submit an outcome with results, impactful results, I'd say go for it, because there will be a position, no matter what, for that field itself. Whether it was policy, whether it was strategy, or any that kind of pizzazz in government, there's always a position for a creative. Because creatives, the one thing that is very that's very powerful about creative is they're willing to generate results, and it's not as impactful as other industries.
Maybe it's too many mics.
If I can just add that.
Go ahead.
If I can just add that, I also know a lot of people who work in, let's say, creative, cultural industry policies, or in the creative field in general, and they come from, let's say, engineering background, or they're mathematicians, or something that's very finance, business, yeah. And to be honest, some of them demonstrate this remarkable creativity because of their background, not despite of their background. So I think there is room for people, actually I think there's a lot of room for people who come from very diverse backgrounds who can contribute to creative industries, whether it's as practitioners or whether it's people who are involved in the process of creating something, or in the policy behind it, or in the educational aspect of creative industries. But I do believe that, I'll never forget meeting someone who is an engineer by education, the way his brain functions and the way he applies it to the creative policy fascinated me. And up until I asked him, like, so what is your background actually? And he said engineering. And I thought, yeah, that makes sense because it's problem solving and the way you think. So these conversations are something that I think are very beneficial as well, to normalize that diverse backgrounds can actually make something very beautiful within the field. So that's just I wanted to add. Yeah.
Okay, great. So did you want to add anything, Sultan?
Yeah, I actually would like to add something. These are really great comments. I think something for people to realize, and I don't know where everyone is at in their life, in their creative life, but it sounds very boring, but don't forget your network. The last few years, it's just been building up connections in different fields. And these are the people, once you've made connections, can really help you out in the future. Okay, I'm a designer, but I made friends with finance, strategists and stuff. And sometimes it just takes a really simple chat over, at an event, and an idea comes up, or you find a connection. So I'd say never work in a silo. I understand if you have a practice and you're an artist, you like to be surrounded by artists, but if you're in the creative field, you can't work in a silo. The finance, the Excel sheets, the project managers, all of these come together to create something. I think a problem with a lot of creatives, whatever field they may be, we sometimes have our heads in the clouds, and sometimes you do need someone to ground you to actually create something realistic and get to that goal in the end. And
yeah, no, continue. I'm going to add to that, but go ahead. Okay.
I'm good. I'm opening.
Yeah.
I'm opening up a box. But I think that's all I wanted to say because I actually like to hear what everyone else has to say. I think that's just an important point I've realized from the beginning, is you can be stubborn and you don't want anyone to come into your space and this is my project and this is my design. No. But you realize everyone around you is towards the same goal. So you need to at least open up a little bit for everyone to kind of come in and help you out. So build your network. Really, it's such a, we always hear that in finance sectors and things like that, but essentially it's the same for every field. Build your network, make friends. These are connections that you don't know in a few years could come back and be extremely beneficial to what you do.
So show up and be present.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Show up and be present.
Khalid.
Yes. So adding to what Sultan said, a part of my work is conducting a lot of workshops, especially within education and health for early childhood. And we've noticed in these workshops, the groups that tend to come up with a lot of ideas are the groups that were the creatives. And they're not necessarily creatives themselves, but they studied in the creative industry. Some of them studied fine arts and performance philosophy, and a lot of fields you would not expect. Okay, why would I go into this within this market? But funny enough, when conducting these workshops and having these conversations, people that come from a creative background are the ones that generate the most results. And they're the ones that were most valuable within these.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that because I want to flip this question. So we were talking about how do people who don't necessarily have creative backgrounds get into the creative field in other different ways. Let's switch it around. People who are studying, let's say, arts, architecture, design, fashion, whatever, they have this dream, I'm going to be an artist or I'm going to be a curator. Now, we all know that is a very long and lonely path. What are the other things? I mean, my advice is always that there are many, many different ways you can use those skills and go and work in other jobs, right? There are other paths. Is there any advice that you would give to those younger selves?
I would say, and I wish someone told me before I started, is the field that you study is not going to define you for the rest of your life. And I think when you're, graduating from high school, it's this excitement unknown, like where am I going to be? And if I study this is what I'm going to be for the rest of my life. I realized later on, once you meet people who are maybe still in the beginning or further in the career, you'll find people in completely different places. And Amina, you brought it up, like you had no idea that your background is engineering, and here you are doing this. So I would say it's scary, but as the journey goes on, these small things you take in from your journey kind of guide you along. And I know it's very kind of conceptual to say this, but really once you go down a career path, like it just happens, and you don't even realize it now. I'm 10 years here and I'm like, wait, how did this happen? And you're trying to guide, because you brought that question up early, and I'm trying to figure out what was the journey. And essentially it was just a number of small events that put me there. So I would say, college is really important, or university is important, but don't let that kind of define you for the rest of your life. It just happens along the way.
Khalid, Amina, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I have something to add, Sultan, as well. Very well said. It is something that I don't think most parents would be happy to hear. But go with the flow, honestly. People who are studying, don't stress about your grades. Don't stress about the outcome and results. Don't stress about, oh, I should excel in this major because this is the time that I spent. This is the efforts, this is the energy that was wasted. It's never wasted, and don't ever regret that, because you never know what's your next step. Just go with the flow, with the opportunities. Take the first opportunity that comes and presents itself, no matter how small or big, because you never know who you're going to meet, like Sultan said, and you would never know what will derive your thought process into finding a new, let's say, passion. And people along the way get into the creative field even later in life, after they've realized, oh, well, what am I doing in this technical field? I'm more of a creative, I'm more of a this or that. So my advice would be just go with the flow and don't stress about staying in that field. Honestly, just like what Sultan said, yeah.
I think just to add to that, there's also an institutional aspect of it, or I would say the venues or the opportunities. So I think, especially in the UAE, there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of festivals, a lot of fairs, a lot of, like the place where we are at today and this event. And I would say universities are doing an incredible job, and institutions, the powerhouses in the field, such as NPUA, where you do have internships, that Khalid, you were an intern as well. So I think these are the opportunities that you get to also explore whether this is something that you would like to do, right? Because studying something is one thing, but actually seeing how it is in the real world and how it connects to other things in the ecosystem is something else as well. So I think these opportunities, staying curious, I think, is at the bottom of what I'm trying to say, to really explore, because around us there are opportunities everywhere. I mean, that's how they got me into journalism, through journalism into comms, through comms into the creative field, and I didn't even realize that that was the path until I was like well into it. So I think just that curiosity will open a lot of doors, and just being out there, being, what was it, present in the moment?
Being present, yeah. And showing up.
And showing up.
Yeah. Being present and showing up is really important. Curiosity, the other thing, and a passion, and to go and see the I mean, it's very true, Khalid. You need to, universities are the best years of your life. You should really enjoy them as much as you can. Take every opportunity, but it's not the end. It doesn't define you forever. There's so many other things, and the world is changing. There's so many new things happening in the world. I think before we go any further, why don't we open it up to the floor and see if anyone has any questions for any of our panelists? Anybody have any questions?
Anybody?
We don't bite. Okay. Is there another? Never mind. Microphone? Okay. So back there and then in the front.
Hello, hi. My name is Katya, and thank you so much for all the insights that you shared. I did have a question about, I loved your advice about staying curious and, going with the flow, and you really never know where you're going to end up. But my question is, if you are interested in exploring another, field or a job that you haven't really done before, but like you might be interested in, how do you showcase that you do have the qualifications, even though, let's say, your experience on paper doesn't necessarily translate that you are qualified to do the job? So I was wondering about any advice for that.
I would say volunteer. Show up if they do events, if they do talks, if they do events, or whatever they're running, go to them, find out who the organizers are, and see if there are ways to just volunteer for free if they don't have paid internships. And just quietly, very quietly and gently stalk them is what I would advise. But volunteering your time is a great way for you to get a step into an organization, for you to figure out, is this really where I want to go? and for them to kind of realize, and then if you excel, they suddenly realize, wow, this person is great. We have this opportunity. Do you want to apply for it?
Yes, adding to Layla and answering your question, Katya, conversation. So whenever you have an opportunity or you're in one of these events, just strike a conversation with one of the organizers or people who are working there and get the real insights of how they feel about the place, because no matter what the job and occupation is, it's a skill that can be gained and learned. But having an insight on what that organization or that field itself can be beneficial for you and add value to yourself, that's where you can make it a sound decision where, okay, I'm going to fit in this field, I would like to pursue it. And also comes from personal experience that if you're passionate about something, it will come easy to you. And yeah, just have a conversation.
I wanted to add to Khaled's thing also, be in their circle, just always be around in some way and be annoying. It's
That's
totally,
what I said.
do
Quietly stalking.
Quietly stalk them. Like it's perfect. Just you gotta be a bit annoying. Is that because subconsciously you're just gonna stick in the back of their head, and if the CV comes up, you're like, okay, I remember her. She really annoyed me, but let me check this. Okay, actually, you know what? It's about that, you know.
Yeah, like a simple conversation you would never know who you're talking to, firstly, and then your name or maybe some project that you were working on would actually be in another conversation that would lead to another, and then there's an opportunity out there that you will be reached out for. I've met a lot of speakers and a lot of artists that we've recommended for international or national exhibitions. It was just by pure coincidence. So, yeah.
Great advice.
So it's the be present and show up and, you know, quietly stalking.
Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mariam. I wanted to know, when you're being present and when you show up, don't you have to provide value, which is sort of difficult when you don't have experience in that new field? Like, is curiosity enough?
It's a good start. And so when we say be present and show up, that means, it doesn't mean just once. It means go to things. So let's say you are interested in, you're an artist and you want to figure out, I want to work with a gallery. I get this question asked all the time by young artists, you know, how do I pick a gallery, like which gallery? I'm like, you know what? You need to go to all the gallery shows that exist in the UAE. You need to be on their mailing list. You need to go and do your research. You need to go and meet people, understand what is their program. So when you have the opportunity to talk with somebody who maybe runs that gallery or an artist who works in that gallery, you have a certain amount of information already. Become friends with people who work in the industry or the organization that you're interested in. Yes, you might not have the specific experience, but you can gain a lot of knowledge by doing your research beforehand. And that always shows to whoever you're going to then be speaking to that, okay, you're hungry, you really want to be a part of this process. Let me give them a few minutes of my time and listen to what they have to say, right? So there are a lot of things that you can, that don't underestimate what being present and showing up means, and being open to having conversations, maybe not with the head of that organization, but find out who else is working there. Speak to the person who works behind the desk. Speak to the person who's, you know, running the talk or something like that. If it's, you know, there are all these other levels of individuals who work and make organizations or make entities run, and you don't always have to go to that top person. You need to speak to all the others before.
Yeah. To add to Layla, it's as boundless as the creative field it is. Even the process of getting a job producing something in that field is boundless. There are no certain rules. It's not like you can fill up a job application and you'll get a call and an interview. It's not the same as in the creative industry. Not this, in coming up with a project. Not every project have the same path or the same process. And it's the same thing with getting a job or a position within the creative industry. It's not manual. You'll have to find your own way in getting a job. I know that sounds a bit vague.
You're not
but
making
that's
it
the truth.
easy for them, though.
I know, but that's the truth. That's
I
the
mean,
truth.
there are standard ways of applying for a job, but there are also many other ways that you can also find a way in, is what we're trying to say, yeah?
Sorry, I mean, I'm keeping you. But it's the same way with me. Like, I did not get my first job just by applying for it. I was present. I applied for the internship. I went through the internship, and somehow somebody heard that I was part of that group, that I had the architectural background, and they needed an architectural specialist for that position. So it's just conversation and coincidence. So, like I said, be present.
Actually, it's really good that what you just mentioned is it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
So it's not just about you, for example, wanting or seeking something, but it's also that place, whether it's an organization or a project or a creative calling, also needs to it needs to be a two-way street. And I think one of the first things that you mentioned, Maryam, was value. And I think the industry of storytelling is an industry of based on values, right? Because every good story has to have its foundational values. And I think values are in doing research to find out what is that niche where there's a gap, and to see whether you are the person to fill, or is that actually a place where you want to go, or a project you want to do. So again, it's a two-way street. And also in that, finding commonalities, right? Because if you cannot establish the same language, then obviously it wouldn't work. But if you can, if there are commonalities, if there are things that are in common, that yes, I have my unique value, this is where I see that I can actually contribute, and we are speaking the same language, we're moving towards the same goal based on a similar set of values and similar thinking, I think that's where that kind of perfect two-way street is. So, and again, whatever it is, if it's an internship program, if it is an organization that you're trying to approach, whether it's even let's say an MFA, right, a fine arts program, or whatever it is, it has to be a symbiosis of some sort. That's what I would say.
I wanted to add something else to that, and I think this summarizes a lot of the points we talked about. Is like, it's just go with the flow and passion, and in a sense that my old job, I worked in the Baladia municipality, a very, very old school government, bureaucratic, sometimes a nightmare, but I actually loved it. But when I moved to the new job and I didn't really go out there, it kind of just ended up on my desk twice. And when it came back again the second time, I knew I had to take this job. And they put me forward and said, Sultan is going to be the new government liaison. I would be the one sitting in meetings, translating, and sitting between government entities. And once they sat me down and gave me my job description, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I come from a background in design and art. I can bring so much more value to the other stuff. Here's my CV, here's my portfolio, here's a bunch of art, and slowly convinced them that I would be better put into somewhere else and bring more value. And, you know, I can also say I was lucky enough that I had a great person on the other side who understands these skills, these abilities, and saw something else where it's like, you know what, Sultan shouldn't be here, you should be there. And I think also it's that hunger and passion, that curiosity we're talking about. When someone sees hunger in someone and passion, they know this person is switched on. And it triggers something in them to say, okay, this person, I see potential. Let me think about where they can be, where they can actually bring value. Because it's also not just you, it's on the other side, if they're a good company as well, a good organization, to really kind of delegate and say, this person shouldn't be here, they should be over there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody? No? Okay, great. Any final thoughts from any of our lovely panelists here? Two of whom are former interns, by the way, so if you're applying for the internship, you can talk to these two about their experience.
Yeah, I mean, I did mention a few times. If it wasn't for this internship, I wouldn't be where I am today. And yeah, I thank you, Leila, so much for this opportunity.
Of course, we're happy to see our interns move on and do many, many other different things and new things. Go ahead, Sultan. You wanted to add a final comment?
Everyone should apply. Everyone should apply. It was a fantastic time in Italy. We got to meet so many people, so many opportunities. A lot of the people I know now, let's say network and friends, literally started from my Venice internship. And the creative and art industry in the UAE is somewhat still small, and everyone knows each other. So once you're in, you'll get a ton of new opportunities opening up for you. And I guess to close off, I'm not going to say the same things, but really, I'd say don't be scared. what you're doing right now is not going to define you for the next 5, 10, 15 years. It's a process. Go with the flow, as I said, and things just come up. Just take it as is. Don't be scared. It's everyone, and this is not just exclusive to artists and creatives. It's anyone.
For everyone.
It's for everyone. Any career path you go to, it's just a process. It comes up. Things come up, and take it. Be hungry, and don't be scared to take risks. I've messed up a few times, and here I am talking to you guys.
And Layla will end up with an inbox full and not enough time to go through those
It's okay.
applications. But yeah, passion speaks volume. If you're actually passionate about it, it'll come easy. Your work will speak for itself, and the opportunity would come. It requires hard work to actually, like we said, be present and actually pursue your passion further. But yeah, just being passionate about your topic would speak for itself. Yeah, I'd say.
I also maybe just want to add the kind of human aspect of a lot of people are more approachable than you may think at the beginning. And I think a lot of people also struggle. I mean, no matter what level they're at in any industry. So not that they struggle in the moment, but everybody's story, I think there is an element of struggle as well. And self-questioning, self-doubt, probably an identity crisis somewhere there down the line. And I think when you do approach people and talk about these things, I feel like it's very reciprocal. So I think I would be the first one to share my story with you as well and say, actually, me too, I feel you. So, and that also, I think, starts a whole nother conversation as well. That's honest. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just add a few notes, just summarize. Curiosity, be present, show up, have passion, don't overthink things. If you really want to pursue, there are ways to get in. And I also just wanted to add, you don't have to be a creative to work in an entity, let's say like Art Jameel that we're in right now. They need all the other skills too to help an entity like this function. So if you want to even just be around or work in an institution that does creative projects, you can do that. There are ways in for you to find. There are ways in, and yeah, just get out there and follow your passion, and you'll find it at the end of the day. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, guys.